Welcome to this session on how to write a paper. This is going to be a short session where I introduce you to how I feel, and this is just my recipe, so clearly I don't think, a golden recipe. There isn't a route which you must absolutely follow, but in my experience, this is an attractive way to write a paper, or indeed very often also submissions in court proceedings, scholarly works, etc. So I hope it helps. I hope it helps you particularly focus the process and avoid that one gets lost in data overload, because I think that is one of the main challenges with both court submissions as well as, of course, scholarly papers. So if we look at and I've got some slides which hopefully will clarify one or two things. The first step in writing a paper is, of course, what I call here on this slide stage 0. This is the stage in which one has to choose a topic. Now, of course, there's a variety of ways in which this can happen. Sometimes a topic is chosen for you. Clearly, that's going to be the case if your client submits you with a brief or sends you a brief. That's also going to be the case for students if the supervisor gives a limited amount of topics which one has to look at. But in many other cases, a professor might say, for my course on European economics, environmental law, public action litigation, whatever it may be, I would like you to propose a topic, and they will typically say, I would like that topic to be recent, to be of recent interest. So off you go, researching what you think is vaguely in the area of the course, and what you think is vaguely recent and new. I think what's crucial in that respect is that you, first of all, and that's the last bit on this slide, is that you talk to your supervisor once you have a certain idea, but that you basically try and find a topic which has just enough material so that you can have something to chew on. It can be sometimes very challenging and daunting if you choose a topic that is so exotic and new that no one else has written anything about it. So you choose something which has enough material but without being milked, because if a topic has already been milked, then of course it's going to be very difficult to write anything that is exciting, novel, or new. So once you have this fairly good and concrete idea, specific idea on what you would like to write, then clearly you must talk to the supervisor or to a teaching assistant if that is what the supervisor has suggested. So that is step 0. Now, assuming you have passed step 0, so you've agreed with the supervisor that your topic is going to be X, then you get to stage 1, which I have to say sometimes is a little bit mixed with stage 0, because in stage 0 as well, you're going to do an awful lot of searching and reading. But let's focus on what is now stage 1. That is the stage of what I call here data overload. So this is basically the stage in which you're going to probably, most of us, even if you are a legal scholar, academic, or if you are a practitioner, then one's intuition would certainly be to simply Google, unless, of course, you have an assignment in an area that you're very familiar with, which might be an area at the bar, or which might be an academic area, then you might, of course, have the knowledge at the back of your head. But for many issues and for many people, that knowledge will not be at the back of your head at all. So you Google. You Google what are the obstacles to renewable energy development in Europe? What is the state of the lex contractus in European conflicts law? What is the status of disputed areas in the Mediterranean under public international law, etc., and so on and so forth? You Google, you come across a huge amount of data from many topics, so you will bump across books, you'll come across articles, you'll come across newspapers cuttings, you'll come across blog posts, tweets, etc. I want to just emphasize very briefly excuse me, on that issue, that for blog posts and tweets, that even in academic scholarship, they have now become quite relevant. There's an awful lot of very good academics, there's an awful lot of very good practitioners as well, who tweet and who post blogs on areas of their expertise, and one certainly must not dismiss those offhand, because there's an awful lot of them that will be very, very crucial. So at this stage you will scroll through a lot, you will click on an awful lot, you might even print quite a few documents if that's your preferred way of action, although at this stage that would be a little bit unwise, because you might be printing an awful lot of stuff that you actually in the end might not really be using. That is not in and of itself bad. It's good to be drowned in data. It's good to get a very broad idea of what is out there on the topic of your choice. But the crucial issue here is to leave this stage timely. What happens time and again is that pupils at the bar, that students and so on, after a number of days, weeks, months even, depending of course on the issue that one is researching and on the relevant deadlines, that after X days, weeks or months, the student comes back to you and says, Professor, or if it is at the bar, you know, however they might address you, they will say, I am utterly lost. I have read and seen so much, I have no idea where to begin. That stage of complete data confusion is, in my experience, best avoided by going to stage 2, which is what I call the usual suspects stage. This is a stage in which you should pick 3 or 4, perhaps even just 2 if it's a very short assignment. 3, 4, I wouldn't go much further than 4, usual suspects. People that have the reputation of being good in this particular area. I'll get back to you in a second to how you might decide who those usual suspects might be. But the point is that you, in this stage, that you suppress the intellectual curiosity, which you might naturally have, particularly if you are studying. Suppress your intellectual curiosity, which will also have been triggered by the many exciting ideas that you will have seen in stage 1. Suppress that for the time being with a view to building a skeleton. Make sure that you have a structure which will give you something to hold on to, which will give you something to anchor an exciting analysis onto, so as to avoid that you get lost. So you pick 2, 3, 4 usual suspects. How do you know who those usual suspects are? Well, first of all, it might be that the supervisor for the course has given you a number of sources or websites of which she or he says these are the core sources of whatever the topic may be. That, of course, will help. There might be other ways in which you can probably detect that someone is a usual suspect. They have written a handbook about it with a reputable publisher. They have published a paper on it in a reputable journal at a top university. Or indeed they might have published a shorter article in a very good newspaper. All those elements are indications that that these people that have written this particular analysis will be at the top of their game and will be recognized experts. So you pick, in the example I have on the slide here, we've picked 4 usual suspects. And the first usual suspect, let's say that the topic is something that earlier I suggested might be obstacles to the development of renewable energy, then usual suspect 1 will say the problems with renewable energy development are A, B, and C. Right? Usual suspect 2 will probably say the challenges are actually B, C, and D. Usual suspect 3 will say A, C, and D, and usual suspect 4 will say A, B, and C, perhaps an E, whatever it may be. You see where I'm getting at. The usual suspects will probably converge in their analysis of what the main challenges to a particular topic are. Right? So what you do is you take these elements And you build that, as you can see on this slide, into a skeleton. You build the topics which the usual suspects has suggested represent the core challenges to your chosen topic, and you break them down into the relevant headings. So in the example that I gave here, because of the various topics that the experts suggested, you will have in your skeleton 4 headings. You will, in other words, basically at this stage of the analysis, assume that the challenge with renewable energy development is heading A, B, C, and D. That's it. You know fully well from your data overload stage that there's many other people who suggest an awful lot of other stuff, right? But that's not what you want to be interested in at this moment. You build your skeleton. That basically means that you have now transformed data from stage 1 into information. That information gives you the skeleton. That information gives you what you need to avoid that you feel lost. Fairly simple. It works very well, because the advantage of this stage is that you can now go to the intellectually arguably much more exciting stage, which is stage 3, and that's what I call here on this slide the stage of confrontation. This is a stage where, having now gotten your skeleton, having your backup, not having to feel lost, where you can go back, as you see on the arrows indicated on this slide, you can go back to what I called in stage 1, every Tom, Dick and Harry who have expressed their opinion about a particular topic. And what's exciting in stage 3 is that even though Tom, Dick and Harry may not be usual suspects, they may actually have exciting things to say. It's clear why. Sometimes the usual suspects have recycled old work. Sometimes the usual suspects are so much at the top of their game that they're also engaged in an awful lot of admin, management and so on, so they haven't perhaps followed the most recent developments. They might have basically also run out of exciting ideas, right? It's clear that the usual suspects will continue to have an impact on the topic, but it's equally clear that fresher minds, fresh meaning either younger minds or simply people that are newer to the field, will have interesting ideas as to what, in the example of my slides here, as to what the obstacles to renewable energy developments are. So in this stage of confrontation, it may well be that you dismiss what the 2 or 3 or some of the elements which the usual suspects suggested lie at the core of the problem. It may be that you say, actually having thought about it and now read comfortably, right? Because the point of stage 3 is that you can now do the data confrontation in a comfortable way. You've got your skeleton, right? Almost nothing can now go wrong. You can use all these extra sources and you can start reading this diagonally. You can much more quickly skip through them, looking for fresh ideas, looking for novel insights. I should add at this stage, I haven't got that on the slides, but it's important to realize. I should add at this stage that you must, in this whole process from the very beginning, even in stage 0, make sure that you keep very good track of any ideas that you might write down and where you got those ideas from. It is this, aside from purposeful plagiarism, most plagiarism happens unintentionally because we convince ourselves that good ideas that we have on paper actually were our ideas, even though we may have actually picked them up weeks, months before from someone else. So please make sure that you keep track from the very beginning of where you got an idea from. If you want to do that with the full Monty of source referencing from the very beginning, great. If you think that that's a waste of time, then just simply make sure that you have a shortened way of citing sources, for instance by simply numbering your sources, and that you include those in footnote or in the body of the text straight away so as you don't forget. Going back to stage 3, excuse me, you will have confronted all these various ideas, and that may mean that in your mind you start dismissing some of the headings that the usual suspect suggested. You still have heading A and D, but you now start adding heading F, G and H, which are suggested to you by the lesser gods, the ones who just posted a blog, the ones who posted in a journal that is perhaps less, has a slightly less established reputation, and so on and so forth. And of course, crucially, this is also the stage where you will have formed your own idea. That's what I have at the very bottom of that slide. You now emerge as a reliable source and as a reliable creator of ideas, because in your mind and through all the reading you have confronted a wide range of issues, a wide range of ideas yourself, which you can now comfortably insert into what will turn out to be the final structure of your paper. So the skeleton that you have developed in stage 1, which is giving you the backup and a support throughout this whole process, might well now disappear to some degree. It could be that it still survives, but it's likely that some of it will disappear. So don't be afraid, of course, to change the structure, to change headings, and to turn things around. The point of the skeleton is not so much that it stays there for absolutely ever. The point is that it gives you the backup whilst you are trying to get on top of all these various sources. So if you look, this is a slightly closer up idea of this insertion of your own ideas, having read all these various sources. And this is then again the overview of the whole process from stage 0 right through to stage 3, the level of confrontation. Now, I'm absolutely confident that what I have told you will not at all be extremely exciting, let alone patentable, but it, in my experience, has been a useful way to induce students into, or indeed pupil barristers, into writing structured papers in which your creativity and your own insightful ideas will emerge, but they will emerge in a safe way. Don't feel as if your creative, extraordinary ideas need to appear from the very beginning of the paper. That is a talent which is given to very few of us, and in fact it's probably a talent that is only given to those of us with a certain amount of experience in a certain area. Most of us have to go through all these stages in a structured way so as to in the end up with something that is an exciting paper with innovative ideas based on a proper research methodology and without having felt at an utter loss at some stage in the procedure. So I hope that is helpful, and if you've got any further questions on this process, then I trust you will find me.